Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is Biology Evolution Part 6. Previously in Part 5, we discussed the process of evolution, that a gene pool, evolution will occur when the gene pool changes, when the frequency of alleles in a population change. An allele is one set of a gene that controls a trait. For example, you could have, if the trait is color of a moth, you could have a dark allele or you could have a light allele. And we started talking about the 5 conditions, requirements when evolution does occur. So the 5 requirements when evolution does occur. First one was non-random mating, where some individuals have more opportunities to mate and have offspring, and then their traits and alleles become more common in the population. And we know that the change of frequency of alleles in a population is evolution. So sexual selection is one type, where males with certain traits will compete with each other, and one of them will have more mating opportunities. Female choice is another type of sexual selection, where females will choose to mate more often with males with a certain trait. Perhaps the peahens will mate more often with peacocks with large, beautiful tail displays, fans. A second requirement for evolution to occur is mutations do occur. And there are changes in DNA, and that does happen. It's low, but it's frequent enough that it does play a big role, and that is mutations are the only source of new alleles that never existed before, and then natural selection will work on those, either making those new alleles less common if they're bad or more common if they are helpful. The third requirement for evolution is that there is migration, and migration can lead to gene flow, which is the introduction or removal of alleles from a population. And we know that the allele frequency in a population will go up or down when individuals move out. It'll go down. And when individuals move in, the allele frequency of this population has changed. So that is evolution. So let's talk about migration. It can also lead to allele frequencies if the organisms move to a new environment. So when there's a new environment that a population moves to, some alleles that were just take it or leave it now become beneficial, and then they become more common in the population. For example, let's talk about a situation where there were 50% white bunnies and 50% brown bunnies. And now this population migrates and it goes up to the Arctic, and we know that the white bunny population has an advantage over the brown furred bunnies. So then more of the brown bunnies will die and more of the white bunnies will survive. And so the frequency of alleles for white fur increases in the population, and that is evolution. So let's look at an example. So looking at this example, we have a western deer population which has lighter fur, and we have an eastern deer population which has darker fur. And it is represented by red and blue dots. And this is the allele 1, and this is allele 2. So we could see it's hard for them to get through, but if there's a pass and some of these deer, some of these western deer get over to the eastern deer population, we see that the frequency of alleles went from all blue to having some red. So the allele frequency in the population has changed. If for some reason these lighter colored deer if their lighter fur gave these deer an advantage over the darker colored fur, then we would see that these reds would become more common in the population, and then we know that's evolution. Let's look at our fourth requirement for evolution. Evolution is more likely to happen when the population is small. So it is more likely that there will be genetic drift, which is an increase or decrease of an allele in the succeeding population, so like the next generation, due to chance. So there are a couple different types of genetic drift. One is called the founder effect. And so when allele frequencies in a group of migrating individuals are not the same as their population of origin, and this is just due to chance. So, well, let's look at an example to explain it. So we know that founder effect is when the allele frequency in a group of migrating individuals is not the same as the original population. And we're going to look at polydactylism in Amish in Pennsylvania. So polydactylism is having an extra finger. And so there was a small group of Amish who came from Europe and settled in North America. Pennsylvania has a large population of Amish. And there was a man in some of the original Amish populations that came over, and he had a gene for polydactylism. And so the Amish population is more isolated than the rest of the US population. So then that gene the frequency of that gene in the population is higher than the rest of the population. So that is not necessarily so it's not due to inbreeding, that's not what it is. It's that population has a higher percentage of polydactylism than the outside population because it just happened, it was just chance that one of the guys who came over from Europe to start an Amish settlement had the gene for polydactylism. So if there were Amish populations in Europe, they would have a normal frequency of polydactylism like everybody else. It just happened that one of the guys came over and it was a small population, so that gene became more common than in the regular population. So again, founder effect, when allele frequencies in a group of migrating individuals are not the same as their population of origin, and I'm just making numbers up to simplify it. So let's say in the Amish in Pennsylvania, polydactylism is 1 in 1,000, and in the rest of the population and the original population from which the Amish came, the result is, or the frequency is 1 in 1,000,000, then we know that the allele frequency of the migrating group is different than its group of origin. So let's look at one that's similar but different, bottleneck effect. So this occurs when the population undergoes a dramatic decrease in size, usually due to disease, predation, natural catastrophes such as flood, volcanoes, and ice ages. So let's say we went from 1,000 individuals down to 10 individuals, and so the gene frequency of the 1,000 individuals is going to be different than in the 10 individuals, but it's just because of chance, just because there was a natural catastrophe, there was a volcano, and it wiped out 90% of that population. And so it's different than natural selection because it is random. The genes that get selected for are just random. It was the 10 lucky individuals that didn't die from the volcano. It wasn't that they were better suited for their environment. So looking at an example, so this could go with the founder effect or the bottleneck effect. So we see that we have, and I would like you to make this drawing in your notes, please. We see that we have 10 individuals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And a lot of them have the black allele for a trait. One individual has the red allele for a trait. So let's use the founder effect. So these 3 individuals are like, nope, we're going over here. So it just happens that one of the individuals with the red allele decided to go over there. and now it makes up 30% of the population. So it wasn't because the red allele was better, it was just because it was part of this small population that moved over here. The same thing would apply with the founder effect, the bottleneck effect. So let's say we have our 10 individuals again, and then there is a volcano, and it kills all of these individuals. And then as time goes by, these 3 individuals survived and they reproduced. And now instead of this making up 10% of the population, the allele frequency of this gene is 30% of the population. So evolution has occurred due to chance because this population was small. Our 5th and final requirement for evolution is natural selection does occur. So this is the most important factor in changing allele frequencies in a population. And natural selection can lead to the formation of new species or the extinction of a species. And that would be not just microevolution, but macroevolution when we get new species or extinction of species. And you don't have to write this down, but I would like you to pay attention. Natural selection can change populations in one of 4 ways. There is stabilizing selection, where it goes towards the middle. So the ones on the edges don't do very well, but the ones in the middle do well. There is directional selection, where the one side doesn't do very well, but the other side does. So maybe the slow antelope don't do well, so then it moves it towards antelope being faster. There is disruptive selection, where the edges do better than the middle. And this one isn't as common as the other ones, but let's say that there was like a spotted landscape, and then there were like dark plants and light plants, or dark animals and light animals, and then the medium-sized animals, the medium, kind of light, kind of dark animals get picked on, but then the light ones can hide in the light parts of the environment, and the dark animals can hide in the dark environment. So the light and the dark survive, but the middle don't survive. And then there is sexual selection, which we talked about before, where a certain trait in one of the sexes becomes more common. We didn't give an example with this one, but stabilizing selection, an example of this one is 8-pound babies or 7-pound babies. So it chooses the middle. So if you have really small babies, they have less of a chance of surviving. If you have really big babies, the mama and then the baby have less of a chance of surviving, so it selects for the middle ones. Let's look at these different types with what would happen in natural selection and evolution if we had the original population, where we have a couple of white mice, a little bit more light-colored mice, a lot of brown mice, a little bit less of dark-colored mice, and very few black mice. If it was stabilizing selection, we would see that the white and the black and the light and the dark mice all got eaten, and then the brown mice became more common in the population. And we could also see what would happen with directional selection, where the white and light colored mice all got eaten, and then the darker colored mice became more common in the population. They are the ones that passed on their genes. Whereas disruptive selection means the white colored mice and the black colored mice have some kind of advantage over the brown mice, so then the medium colored mice die and don't pass their genes on, and the light and the black survive. Okay, we're going to pause there for today, and I will see you next time. Bye.